Hello, everybody. My name is Arian Salimi, and today we're going to be doing a double feature. Two albums. That's a lie. We're going to talk about one album and one game today. We're going to try a new format for the show. This is Bass Tunes, KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. I hope you're all having a great Friday. If you might have heard from the original, this opening track, we're going to be talking about, for the first half of the show, Reinventing the Steel by Pantera. This is their fifth. No, it's not their fifth. What is it? Their ninth. Because they had a huge run of glam metal, hair metal bands, album style things that they just did not want anyone to see the light of day on. No one wanted to hear about it. Nobody cared. No one liked it. So then they came back with a groove metal in 1990. And this is the final album in that sort of vein, and the final album for them as a band. Now, ironically, you look at Wikipedia, you say the final studio album, now it's their latest, because I guess the band is back because they're performing live. But let me tell you something, Sonny, that's not true. I mean, it kind of is true, right? But at the same time, the band ain't coming back, bro. They ain't back. But here's the thing. Over the years, and more so over the year, I've sort of slowly been going through their discography every so often, right? We started with the hit, the number one hit in, December of last year or something like that. And then we just sort of slowly shifted over to their next album, and then the Southern Trendkill. I never really checked out their first groove metal one, and I never checked out their last. Well, one day I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to shuffle through their music. I was actually over at my partner's house, right? My girlfriend's house. So I had to help, clean up, we had to water plants outside, and I was sort of helping her with that, and also helping her, I guess, clean the kitchen up and things like that. I was being helpful Andy, being a little helpful, helping clean up. Very much appreciated. It was very nice. But, right? Here's the thing. I end up just sort of scrolling through music, because I always like listening to stuff because I have a terrible attention span or something. You know what I mean? We end up getting to Revolution Is My Name is apparently the fifth most popular track on streaming services. And Revolution Is My Name is, in fact, the, shall we say, well, it's like the lead single off of Reinventing the Steel. Obviously, the name is a pun on reinventing the wheel, I guess. But the ironic part of it is that it's not really a reinvention at all. It's just sort of a little bit of a retreading, but it's fun. And it's strange because, to me, why I want to talk about this album, just going through it and reading about it, it really sort of feels like the last hurrah of a band, of a group of people trying to make something work. But the ironic thing is, that is not how the band perceived it when they were making it. They thought, hey, we're going to come back in a year or something and make another album. They didn't. What happened? Well, we have to go back to 1996, around that time, with the great Southern Trendkill. By the way, if you guys don't know that band, they made that song called Walk. Everyone knows their band. Everybody has mixed reception on it. Some people love it. Some people hate it, especially with how some of the band members are acting nowadays. But I love it, right? So that's why I'm talking about it. Southern Trendkill comes out. I wanted to talk about this album at some point, but I don't think I will, right? I kind of have a limit for myself of 2 albums per artist, max, although I think I hit 3 with Metallica, so maybe I'm lying to myself. But I try to have a little bit of a limit so I can keep a bit of a variety and not make an entire season or a quarter. I call them seasons, but they're quarters. Another quarter's worth of shows about the same thing over and over again, even though it is my show. I want to have a bit of variety for myself, just having fun with it, and 2, for you, the listener, because obviously I make this show for me, but at the same time, I make it for other people to listen to, and I want people to actually listen to the show and, well, give a care about it. I want them to care. I want y'all to like what you're hearing, So more people listen to it, which makes me feel better about myself, but also, you got to spread the love. Got to spread the love for the show. But Southern Trendkill is insane and it's amazing, and maybe I will talk about it one day. But essentially, here's the thing. You get lead singer Phil Anselmo, bald head guy, shaved head, big, hulky, meaty dude, like basically the other bands, although I think other bandmates, although he's the tallest. Big Texan man, comes in at, isn't the original artist, like vocalist for the band was originally Terry Glaze, but they kick him out, and Phil comes in for their, I guess, was it their fourth album, Power Metal, I think? Third or fourth? I don't remember. I think it's Power Metal. I know it's Power Metal, but I don't know what number it is. But the last one of their original sort of groove metal, like glam metal, Motley Crue, you know, weird flashy latex suits and things like that. Just, you know, kind of dated 80s stuff. So he comes in, and he's like that. Band tensions sort of start bubbling up a lot, especially around the time in 1996. Phil's got a substance problem, a really big one so big that he overdosed on stage and then came back to life and then finished his set. Bro died on stage for 3 minutes and then came back to life. Kind of crazy. But he just wasn't it. They were arguing and fighting a lot. He recorded the vocals separately from everybody else. You sort of get this, it's just bile and just hatred and anger. And his vocals are so growly and deep and like death metal-y at this point. He does what I've read online, you know, some random forums and stuff, the classic Phil Anselmo vomit impression, because he sounds like he's retching half the time. It's absurd. He gets another vocalist from another big metal band to also just straight up start screeching on it. And then it results in the band's heaviest, most intense, darkest, just off the wall offering that they ever would do. And it's strange, because how are you going to top it? I mean, Trendkill didn't really have much of a radio play, and it makes sense. It's very abrasive to the ears. It's very explicit. There isn't as much of a classic single as there would be on their other albums. There isn't one that's as fun or simple to grasp or poppy like Walk or I'm Broken or This Love, right? I mean, you have Drag the Waters, which I think was meant to be the single, but even then, the rest of them are just so heavy and sludgy almost and biley and just piercing. It sort of takes what they were going for on Far Beyond Driven to go as extreme as possible, and then just sort of takes that extremeness and dunks it in a huge bath of emotional turmoil and conflict and substance addiction. And you get this really dark just album where you have this big man previously being this big macho man, being tough and going at it with anybody who's taking me down. I'm here to make a stand. You know, we're here to band together. We're a team. We're the new generation. We're going to make it, like a lot of these other rock bands do. And now he's just yelling at, the media's telling me off. I hate everybody. And talking about giant storms killing everybody and floods and biblical stuff. And it's insane. How are you going to top Trendkill? Well, first, a 4-year break. Because Trendkill 1996, The Steel 2000. And 2, get Phil Anselmo getting some help for his problems. He's a lot more stable at this point. They were still, you know, doing some stuff on the side, the boys, as a lot of, you know, they're kind of a ragtag team of boys, you know. Immature dudes in some ways, probably, as a lot of people who make music from a very young age and they get famous for when they don't really have time to socialize in a real world. I'm not saying these guys didn't. I don't know. I'm not going to have them. I'm probably never going to have them in studio. And I mean, I'd only be able to have like 1 or 2 of them in studio. The other 2 are, you know, not here anymore. But still, right? You get to the point where he takes some time off. He gets some help. Works on some of his other side projects like Down, which I love Down. I did talk about Down for a little bit on one episode. I didn't really do too much about it, right? This is in this sort of era of me not promoting as heavy and not really structuring it as much, which is a lot of time with the show. But hey, you know, you're still enjoying it. I'm still enjoying making it, and you're probably still enjoying listening to it. Anyways. And they come together, and they're just making music again and having fun. And the number one thing that I got from it, and then the lead singer mentioned that this is what he wanted to do, so it sort of confirmed it, was this. These sound fun. If you want a fun album from them, that isn't as extreme a lot of the time and is more just boasting and just having fun with the boys and all that, you got to go with this one. Here's the thing as well, though. It's a lot simpler. It's a lot less iconic, I think. It's kind of hard to top these things. And it's like a weird mix, because I read a lot of reviews about albums and sort of see what other people are saying. And it's a weird mix of, these guys they're doing so good, it's still so good. And the other one is like, yeah, these guys feel like they're at the end of the rope, but they don't know what they're doing, and it's all just kind of stale and bland. And I don't really know, right? Like, this sort of brand of metal was sort of on the downswing, right? They obviously started the whole groove metal thing, at least partially. Maybe Helmet a little bit, too. And, those two bands sort of came out, was really big, and then, bam, new metal comes out, the new wave of heavy metal in the not new wave of British heavy metal is different anyways. New metal, the big bands, ones I've talked about on the air. So this sort of classic heavy extreme stuff was kind of on the downswing, You had more melody, more fun. And it's cool, interesting, because there is some melody in there. There's some singing in there. You're not going to get any clean vocals, right? And there's still a bit of a growl to it and a bit more screechy than maybe even something on Vulgar Display or Cowboys from Heck. But, like, at the same time, it's more fun, it's more poppy. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about this album was the fact that it was, shall we say, cleaner sounding. One of the things that I always had a bit of a sore spot with the band, I'm sure a lot of people did, was how sort of terrible the production sounded. The guitar sounded kind of, I don't know, maybe not farty. I don't know how to describe it. Just very gross sounding, very just not really rich and full, just very piercing to the ears and very just sort of archaic sounding. The drums clicky, the bass sounds good, the vocals sound alright. But it's that one guitar tuning, I think using a solid state, not a solid state, like a tube amp, I think, the right specific type. But apparently a lot of people in the industry really liked it. I don't know. And it's sort of gaining on me, especially with songs like, let's say, Rise or Effing Hostile, where they sort of really get that huge... there's this bite and grit to it that like really cuts into your ears and is really piercing, and I love it, especially when you crank it up at high volumes, because it's somewhat bright, but it's not the most bright in the world sounding wise. It's like a sound term, especially with the non-remastered versions. They sort of work out well. With Reinventing the Steel, however, they decided to produce their own album. For the prior albums, it was Terry Date, producer of a lot of other bands at some point, right? But he's one of the things he's best known for is producing them with that certain sound. And they decide, hey, we're going to produce their own album. And some of the people sort of helping Terry work, I think Howie Steinberg was one of them, or was it, I think it was Howie Steinberg. A couple of other people who were sort of working for Terry and was like, hey, you know what? These guys are good. We can handle ourselves. Sort of helped them with it, recorded it, mastered it. It might have been Howie Weinberg doing the mastering, or I keep forgetting the names. But, similar sounding names, I think. They did sort of the mixing and the mastering, but they also helped with the production. And it sort of leads to an interesting sound that I don't know if I love or hate it. And the really fun thing is that Terry Day comes in for the 20th anniversary in 2020. It does a remix of it. And I don't like that as much either. I don't know which one I prefer, because I'll tell you the differences, right? The original version from 2000, it's kind of dry sounding. It doesn't sound very rich and full, which is interesting because I feel like in spite of some of the shortcomings of their sound and mixing or whatever, you always had this sort of interesting, it always felt rich and full. It always felt like they're blasting your ears with it. The guitars even don't feel. It all feels kind of over-processed, but not. It feels kind of like clean and processed, but it doesn't feel like they sort of went into the studio and did that extra pass to maybe make it sound more maybe artificial, but also maybe a little bit more, shall we say, I don't know, good sound, more just like pleasing to the ears. You don't really get that as much with Reinventing, right? Have I not been? Oh, great. Well then, I guess for the listeners, if we upload this, have not been recording this one. So, hey, it's interesting. I was trying to figure out the new recording. In the studio, like a flash drive you can punch in. I guess it wasn't working, huh? And we weren't even out of storage. All right, well, that's great. I guess we can do the second half of the show a little bit differently, right? Because we're going to do the second half in a little bit. But yeah, the mix of Terry Date's version is different, right? It's more rich in a way, but it feels more heavily processed. The drums kind of sound muted, but the cymbals sort of sound weird. It sounds kind of like low bit rate or something like that. I don't really know what to say about it, I really don't. Yeah, I guess for the first half it's going to be the quality thing. Hey, you know what? We're chilling on that. And the original mix is just more dry, but it kind of feels more rich. But it's like, I don't know. It's like I read reviews like, oh, this mix is terrible. But some people are like, oh, it's really good if you put your headphones on. And, I sat down and put the Sennheisers on. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. But this is the funny thing with music, because sometimes I'm just like, oh, it sounds worse. I listen to it a little bit longer. And then I'm like, you know what? It sounds the same. Who cares? Who cares? And honestly, that's how I feel about it. It's like, who cares about that? You know what I mean? I don't know what to say. Sometimes you listen to stuff and you sort of overly analyze it, but it's like, well, if you listen to it long enough, your brain will get used to it. What else? I guess the songs, right? We got to get to the songs. These songs are interesting, right? Revolution Is My Name is obviously the best one in my opinion. It's the one it's like one of their biggest songs apparently, right? It's got this really interesting bounce and groove to it, and I watched an interview, and they said that basically they took like weeks or months to do this specific one. I don't know. They took a long time to do Revolution, and it shows. You got this opening with this sort of a bunch of these pinch harmonics sort of sounding like a Sabbath-y, dredgy doom metal, because one of the things that they said was, we want to sort of pay some love and show some respect to what our inspirations were, and one of them was Black Sabbath. So you go ahead and even shout Black Sabbath out by name on one of the songs, right? But you sort of have that, and then it goes on for like 40 seconds, and then you just have a groove, You got a nice little interesting melody. There's a bounce to it that you don't really get, that's like maybe not you don't really get. It's sort of like a fun bounce, which I feel like you haven't gotten as much in their prior work compared to this, at least recently, It's like and that weird, those I guess off kilter chords or something like that. And then Anselmo comes out, and it's basically like, I was born at 60, I was born to this world. I can't really do it, especially because I'm not trying to scream into the microphone. But one of the funny things is doing the impressions. He does that sort of scream, but he's like, what is my name? I'm here to do a revolution, music. I don't even know what he's talking about. Some of the reviewers are like, oh, we're just talking about the band and how cool we are. We're always going to be here to stay. And there is some songs like that, There's, we'll grind that axe for a long time, which is, we're just going to keep doing this for a long time. Ironic considering it was the last album. But also, it's like, there's All Cast a Shadow, which is like, when I'm gone, I'll leave my legacy. I'll leave my mark onto it. And there's Heckbound, which is like, they're like, oh yeah, we're going in. We're in Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah. And it just feels like a more fun, less dark, less self-important, more just, hey, we're having fun. Hope you're enjoying it too type of thing. With the cover art too, which is, I think it's Phil, there's just fire. There's a guy jumping in the fire. And there's a blur on it. I thought that meant he was like shirtless or like not clothed at all, but he was actually. He was wearing shorts. They had to blur the photo of him jumping with a bottle of, I don't know, like Jack or something like that. I think it was Jack Daniels. Of course, they had to blur it because you can't have that on, because of licensing or whatever. And it's a really goofy cover. But I kind of like it, It's fun. It catches your eye. It's like, oh, it's one with the fire on it. And I feel like they've always had a good job of, like, covers, It's like Cowboy. It's like, oh, it's sort of a sepia tone photo, but it's like, hey, they're having fun in the bar, we're shredding, we're cool. Because I feel like with that Cowboys album, they're more so having fun with it. It wasn't as dark and serious and like, I'm gonna smack you, if you talk down to me. It's more like I don't know, really. It's like they're talking about Cemetery. I guess Cemetery is sort of like a breakup song, but it's through this process of like despair and stuff. But I don't know. It's more fun. Like, yeah, we're cool. We're cool. We're gonna go. We're gonna rock your world. And we're gonna do rock and roll. It's like a little bit of like that sort of hair metal, like more fun, like rock and roll, baby. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. But you get the picture, right? If you grew up on like that 80s sort of metal, I'll tell you this though, right? There's more fun like that on I guess Reinventing compared to, honestly, since then. Maybe Vulgar Display, but even Vulgar Display, I think is more like meathead, like, I'm a big, strong man, that type of thing. And listen, some people just feel weirded out by that. I know people personally were like, I don't really like this, One, maybe just because of the, like, it's weird, like, southern stuff. Oh, it might be, it's like discriminatory or whatever, you know. But other dudes like, I don't really like the macho man, the sort of, I guess, toxic masculine energy. Maybe they don't say that word, but I sort of get the idea. And I'm like, you know what? You're right to an extent, right? It's very 90s, 2000s. You know, you're not really going to get that much nowadays. But here's the thing, right? Sometimes I want to put on music that makes me feel like Superman. And I feel like Superman, and I feel like I can run a marathon and then go punch 30 holes in my wall and then, I don't know, do a bunch of work. Sometimes I just feel like Superman. Sometimes I want to feel the testosterone flowing through my veins. And I'm like, yeah! Yeah! Hold your mouth for a war! Yeah, it's time to rise! This is all just vulgar display. And then sometimes I want to hear a man screaming his head off after a weird, like, ambient, terrifying section where it's like the weird voices talking to him. And I think you hear a slur. It's like, it's on the, it's like the bridge of Living Through Me on a Trendkill. I know it's nothing to do with that one. But you know what I mean, right? Like, you end up having this... Sometimes you want to feel like that. And this is just more like fun. And there's some heavy stuff there. And I think this is where we'll lean into the... segue into the closing part of this half, right? The death rattle. You know, there's death rattle. It's like, death rattle 6. And then I realized something. You know, I didn't know. I knew this before this. I forgot the fact that Pantera, I got into them because of SpongeBob. SpongeBob. They played them on SpongeBob. I'm not kidding you. You ever hear the, not here, what am I saying? You ever see the episode Pre-Hibernation? It's like season 2, where it's like Sandy's going to go hibernate or something, but because she's like a squirrel or something, wintertime, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But before then, she's like, all right, SpongeBob. I'm sorry. She's like, oh yeah, SpongeBob, we gotta do all these extreme stunts. We gotta get the energy out. It's like, dun, 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 dun. But it's like you watch the intro and it's like, featuring special musical guest, Pantera. And it's the same like fire. They just ripped it from the album cover. You know what? Like, you know, it's like, it's crazy to me. The fact that that's where I got it from. And that riff has been stuck in my head for I don't know how long. It's been stuck in my head for so long. It's like, that's metal. I want to hear something that sounds like that. And I realized, oh, it's like that. And you know what's the other funny thing? The Death Rattle song, it's not the exact same. They just took a part of the riff of like the breakdown bridge, whatever you want to call it, for Death Rattle. And then, well, there you go, right? They just sort of, it's like a demo version. Like, listen, you're going to hear this, and you're going to be like, what's going on? Jellyfishing. SpongeBob, Patrick, Jellyfish. It's on the soundtrack, by the way. You ever watch SpongeBob? You'll hear this part. You're like, wow, they're going sleigh. I just can't believe this is real. I can't believe this is real. I still think about it sometimes. I can't imagine that being real sometimes. I really don't. Like really, dude? Like, really? This is real? But maybe I'll delve into the second half because I want to close out with a song by the band, actually. So, you know. But it's a smaller one. You know, we'll play a little bit of it, maybe a lot of it. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I played bigger songs on the show before, but hey, you know, we're gonna do a little bit of interesting things. Here's the thing with the show, right? Here's the thing, right? I love it because of how much it got me into this stuff. It's like these little seeds they plant in your ears, in your head. Like, this is cool. What's this radical thing? And this memory comes up later. And it's like SpongeBob is one of those things that, like, my generation, we grew up with so much. I want to do a whole episode one of these days just talking about this show and how much it means to me, because it does. It was like the only television show I watched for ages. Like, for years. For literal years. I'm not kidding. Until 2010. It's crazy to me, right? But that's part of it, you know? I liked Reinventing the Steel. There's some good tracks on it. I like Revolution Is My Name. I like Yesterday Don't Mean a Word. And because that one's fun. It's very like, yesterday doesn't mean anything. Just move on to the present. Like, it's really weirdly uplifting and positive. It's a weirdly uplifting and positive and fun, brash album at times. Some of it's kind of underbaked. Some of it just doesn't sound right. And the mix is either too dull or too boomy. So I don't really know what to say about that. But other than that, I did like it a lot. Not nearly as much as the other albums, but I liked it. Anyways, they also did a song for The Crow, the movie. They did it for a cover of Poison Idea, The Badge, right? Poison Idea is, of course, a sort of punk hardcore band from the 80s, 90s. I thought they were cool, but here's The Badge. We will go ahead and close that out. We'll see you in a couple minutes. I'm going to probably pop in here to give the reading and all that. And then we'll talk about Mortal Kombat 1 and my quick thoughts on it, and then maybe just, fluff around a little bit because I haven't finished the story and I don't want to spoil it yet. Anyways, here's part of The Badge. Enjoy. All right, I guess it's a bit of it for then. That's The Badge. It's an interesting song. I like it. It's a good little cover. I'm not going to play the full thing because of time reasons, right? Also, I don't know how goofy it is sonically. But hey, I'm a fan of that song. I have heard the original version, okay, and I like this one more. I'm not going to play it in full. Probably not. Yeah, I won't. I already haven't. But just get a little snippet of it. It's sort of, Poison Ideas is more sort of fun and goofy, whereas this one's more like heavy. Part of it's the vocalist, part of it's, I think, the lower tuning or key they're playing in. It's also this vocalist. It's more like that. And it's kind of interesting being the sort of band they are. And like, people were like, oh, yeah, it's a, they got like the Confederate flag and things like that on like their guitars and things like that. And that sort of aesthetic behind them, maybe the sort of culture behind the band and that sort of area where they're from and all that. Maybe it's weird sometimes having like that sort of like they're doing like a whole anti-cop song, like a straight up like an ACAP type thing, right? Which is cool. I thought it was interesting about that. Anyways,